So, like I said at the beginning of this recording, we're going to kind of pick up where we were at with the divorce case. And so I'm just going to just kind of give you a little bit of overview. Like I said, Patricia came back to see me in, I think, August of 2023. We had two meetings, I believe. The first meeting was sort of a consultation, again, to recap and kind of get up to speed and talk about what it would look like if we did the divorce. And then the second meeting was, okay, cool, it's time for us to go. I believe we drafted the paperwork at the Denny's. That
Mm,
sound right, Patricia? And
right?
I use the DocuSign program, and so I was able to, across the table, type of her stuff, and then send it to her by email and have her send it back to me. And so her first pleadings included a petition for divorce, the information sheet, which has vital statistics about the family, a permanent protection or a request for a civil protection order, a request for a child and family investigator, which is something I'm going to talk about here in a second, a little bit more. And a request for temporary orders, which was asking what happens with the money and the house and things while this case is pending. So I believe we filed that actually on September 12th, if I remember correctly. But as I said in the previous recording, the court was short staffed. And so even though ex parte hearings are supposed to be heard on the day they're filed in front of a judge, we didn't get a hearing for 2 days. When we did get the hearing, I remember it being pretty short and sweet, don't you, Rebecca? Sorry, Rebecca. Don't you remember, Patricia, it being pretty short and sweet?
Yeah, we got in there, we presented our evidence, he made a ruling, and we left.
I think it was like 5 minutes long. It was very, very short. And I will just say, under Colorado Revised Statute 13-14-104.5, you are required to have that hearing. Unfortunately, I can tell you the jurisdiction on the 22nd. I hope they change it, but our judges have gotten into a practice of granting or denying protection orders based on the pleadings without scheduling that required hearing, which is something I'm dealing with in another case that Kirk and I have talked about. And so in this one, we did have our ex parte hearing, but it took a couple days. And Ricky was served that day with the paperwork. That is one of the things that I think Judge Plew, who is the judge that we got assigned to the case, I was very delighted we got him because I think he's a good judge. He is pretty fastidious about making sure law enforcement does their job with regards to service of civil protection orders because by law under Colorado statute, sheriff's officers are required to serve domestic violence-based protection orders for free, which if you know anything about my career and the place I just lived in, you'll know that that's probably been quite a challenge to me to get them to do their job. But they did serve him that day. On the terms of that protection order, Ricky was prohibited from having any contact with Patricia. I believe the only contact we asked for was through an app called Talking Parents,
Later
which
on,
is a sure. Sorry.
I'm sorry, that was later on. He couldn't have her
Oh, okay. Initially, he had no contact,
because we were,
100-yard distance, and we had the children on the protection
yeah,
order, which is not something that we normally do. We usually, I can tell you, in the state of Colorado, generally, historically, they've advised not putting children on protection orders because if it's going to end up being a divorce or a custody matter, just because a parent is abusive to the other parent does not mean that they're not a fit parent. And so we have these whole criteria of different standards and factors that we're supposed to consider. And there's really not a right or wrong answer of what makes a good custodial parent in the state of Colorado. There's actually, I think, 12 entries on the best interest list of things that could possibly be in the best interest, but it's really a matter of the court's discretion. And so if a judge finds a parent in the context of a custody case to be a danger to a child, they have a way to still give them parenting time, which is through supervised visitation. And so that's historically why we didn't do it. This time we did because of the fact that Ricky had been continuing to claim that he was going to take the children to Texas. And because of Patricia's history, where he had taken them once before and then cut off all communication for almost a day. And because he wasn't being forthright with her about what was going on and why he was planning on sneaking out of the state with the kids behind her back, plus funneling all her money away, we were very concerned about there being a real safety risk to the children if we didn't include them on the protection order. And so we did include them on the initial iteration. Ricky was also allowed to have one civil standby. which means he's allowed to go to the house one time with law enforcement for about 15-20 minutes to pick up some necessities, toiletries, bags of clothing, things like that. Mr. Thompson exercised 2 of those visits and did not disclose to law enforcement he'd already had one, and then actually intimidated and threatened Miss Thompson at the second exchange, or second civil standby, if I remember correctly. Patricia, if you want to fill in there.
So yeah, he failed to mention on the second one that he'd already had a first one. So not knowing any better, I let him have a second one. So I'm there with the cop. And while he's getting his things, which he didn't get very many of them, the police officer said he could have up to 45 minutes to get his stuff. But he used about maybe 15 to 20. And the whole time he was muttering under his breath that he's got to get his daddy's jewelry because I'm going to steal his daddy's jewelry. And just over and over, I'm going to steal his daddy's jewelry. She's going to take it. I got to get it. I got to get it. And when he got it, he's like, oh, thank God she didn't take it. He took that. He took a few pairs of socks, and then he went into his son's room and took his son's airsoft rifle and his equipment for his airsoft stuff, and that was it. No clothing.
Okay, so let me stop you really quickly. Did Mr. Thompson's protection order have a provision pertaining to firearms and ammunition?
Yes, it does.
And what did it say about that?
He can't have them.
And so right in plain view of the cop who's enforcing the civil protection order, he was handling a firearm?
He took it out of the house, took it with him.
Cops saw that.
Yes, they did.
Good job, Cortez Police Department. Anyways, continuing on. So Ricky had the protection order and he hired Richard Sims. And so Richard Sims said, hey, I can't do this protection order hearing. I think we were set to like September 28th or something like that. I can't do this protection order. On that day, I've got another court hearing. We're like, okay, fine. That's fine. She's the one who's got the protection. Your client's the one who's restrained. I will say during that time, Patricia, do you believe anybody broke into your house during that time?
Yes, right after the second civil standby, I believe, I come home and things are moved around. I go to the bedroom, I look in the closet, and the gun safe that was previously open had been closed and locked. The key was moved, things were moved around. I go into Waylon's bedroom, all his drawers are empty, things are gone. The dirt bike he had kept in the backyard was gone. Just
So do you know who came into your house?
I believe Waylon Thompson came into my house because at the time he was still a minor and was sent there by his father. Because
okay, and let me just ask you, did we try to ask the court to issue orders about Waylon and or the younger daughter going into the house?
Yes, we did.
And did the court grant those?
No.
And just so you know, the reason why the court did not grant those is because Waylon and the younger lady are not parties to the case. So the court had no jurisdiction over them. So they could break into her house as much as they wanted to, even though their father, who had custodial power over them, was restrained. Which actually, just so you know, if Ricky was in fact making them do that, is a form of coercive abuse under the new law of Colorado, which just took effect August 8th of 2024, that says forcing people to commit crimes in a coercive fashion for the abuser is a form of domestic abuse, child abuse. I believe that those kids, even though I know that they've been pretty terrible to Miss Thompson, are victims of their father just as much as she is, unfortunately.
And
Jill?
And the
Sorry.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, just to be clear where everybody's at right now. So Patricia and the 2 daughters that she had with Ricky are staying at the house, and that's the only ones there. Everyone else is elsewhere.
Yes, and Ricky's dog Otto is also at the house.
Okay.
Ricky, just so you know, I believe we did offer the dog to Ricky, and Ricky said he couldn't take the dog, so Patricia agreed to keep the dog. Would you have cats too, Patricia?
There were 6 chickens, a cat, and a dog, but I want to make known that when he sent his son into my house, he stole the cable to the video cameras that would have recorded his entry. So we couldn't retrieve those off the recorder.
Let me
Those
ask
don't
you
go
about this.
missing on their own.
Let
Yeah.
me ask you about your video cameras. Were your video cameras on the inside or the outside of your house?
Ricky had installed, I think, 4 or 5 outdoor cameras on the outside of the house.
Okay, and who had access to the camera? Like, was it through an app or something?
I believe it was through either an app or just the box. I believe it's just the box, and only he had access to it.
Okay. And so after Mr. Thompson moved out of the house, did you have the cameras removed?
They were up and running until Waylon got in the house, because after he got in the house, he took the connector cord that went from the box to the TV, and we couldn't access the box anymore. So I just unplugged it from the wall.
Okay. And did you change your locks?
Is there
Yes, I did change my lock. There were
Okay.
6 sets of locks to the outside of the house. I changed the front door and the back door, and I moved things around because Ricky had a hoarding problem. So I moved some of his hoard against those areas so nobody could get in there anymore.
Okay, so you basically barricaded some of the other exit doors.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Patricia-
Sorry.
Kirk? Yeah. But Patricia, do you still have that box out of curiosity?
No, I sure don't. I had Googled how to get another cable, and they didn't make them anymore.
I was gonna say, I'm like, man, you should be able to get a cable or something, I would think. But
No, it was a pretty old, he put it in there maybe 3 years after we got married. And
yeah, still.
It was like an old closed circuit system, probably with like some old coaxial
Yeah,
or something.
where we're just like a hard drive.
couldn't even
Yeah.
find
I was gonna,
mine. So
So yeah,
Huh.
so we're moving through the process. And usually at this point in a divorce case, divorce has been filed. We've got a hearing date set for the protection order. Rich starts trying to negotiate with me, and the first thing they offered right out the gate, they offered us like a ridiculous settlement. Like, I don't even remember what it was. Like, Patricia could have. Do you remember it? Go.
yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna get some water. Go. I'm listening.
So in exchange for me allowing 50-50 custody, he would give me the lowest price house. I would be allowed to keep my car, and I would be allowed to keep my income that I'm making, and I would be allowed to keep one of my retirement accounts.
Okay.
how many retirement accounts do you have?
I had 2.
She has a couple, but they were all small because because she was
Sure.
a teacher, because she worked as a school nurse and then a separate nurse, so she had some public education system
Different
retirement,
jobs.
but nothing significant, nothing huge. I think one of them was like 6,000, another one was like 2,000. Is that right, Patricia?
Exactly.
They're both
I'd
really
take
small.
that. You should. That's all. That's all you. That's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
but
Okay.
you have to remember. That's all he was offering her, and I told you less than a month before this, he took over $300,000 and hid it from her of their
Yeah,
money.
that was in January. 300K. Yeah.
So the trade-off of, okay, cool, I'm going to keep this 300,000 plus the other 300,000 that I had you tie up in CDs. And here, you can have $8,000. You can pay me child support. You can have your car, and I'll give you one of my houses, the cheapest house I've got.
I hope
Oh.
you jumped on that deal. It sounds fantastic.
So at this point in time, we couldn't jump on it because we didn't even know what they had.
And I wouldn't have jumped on it because that was a terrible deal.
It was a real
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Kids for a
Real
house.
bad deal. Yeah. And so at this point in time, we didn't even know where the house was.
No,
We still did not know where his houses were. And so in this part of the divorce case at the beginning, where we have hearings coming up, we're arguing over who's going to pay what bills and how much money does he make and how much money. We're supposed to be exchanging discovery at this point in time. And Ricky is by and large refusing to give me any financial information. He will give me documents that he prepared where he hand wrote or typed up what he claims happened with the money, but he won't give me actual bank statements. He also filed a financial affidavit, a sworn financial affidavit, where he left off like $500,000 worth of stuff. And so I contacted Rich and said, Rich, Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you have to give me this information. Oh, well, it's a separate property. It doesn't matter. You still have to give it to me. And so our hearing that was initially set for September 28th, I believe, if I remember correctly, got delayed until October 26th, which kept him away from his children for a longer period of time. And basically, he didn't get any of the things he asked for. My client got possession of the house. She got a temporary civil protection order that was going to be set over for hearing later. We did remove the children from the protection order. He was given every other weekend parenting
Well,
time, and Wednesdays. Sorry, go ahead, Patricia.
I'm sorry to interrupt. At first, he was giving 1 month's worth of 1 week supervised visit at the Pinion Project.
That's true. Before we went back for the temporary order for the hearing October 26th, whenever he was we initially had the protection order, he was put on supervised visitation, entitled to these visits at the Pinion Project, was our supervised visit facility. And I didn't ever see these things, but Patricia did call me a couple of times expressing concerns about the conduct he was engaging in at these visits. And Patricia, I'll let you go ahead and talk about that.
So during the time between where he didn't see the kids and he had supervised visits, the girls only asked about him the day he left, they asked what happened, and then the day after, and they never asked about him again. So then the judge orders these visits. So then I tell the girls, well, you're going to go get to see your dad. You're going to spend a couple hours. You're going to have toys. I took them on a tour. They weren't excited. They didn't want to do it, but they went. So when I got them back, normally when they come back from things, they're chitter chattery. They tell you all about it. Well, they kind of told me about it. They said, we got to see dad. He brought us candy. He talked about, his other kids, and they weren't too happy. Candy and fruit. That's the other one. It was fruit. Fresh fruit.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, it takes time to get used to a new rhythm. So then I take them back the next week, and it's the same thing. They were unhappy. He brought them more candy, more fresh fruit. He showed them pictures of his other kids, and he had them make a video for the other kids to see. And then after that one, I got him back a third time, and Rebecca was upset because she didn't understand why dad didn't want to play with them too much and ask them about their activities and what they were doing, and that he sat them down and made them write letters to their brother and sister to give to them and to look at pictures of them. And
well, and another thing that was really strange about that was the Pinion Project has their own guidelines and their own policies. And one of their policies that's right in their handbook, I'm well acquainted with the Pinion Project because of all the cases I've done over the years. One of their policies says, unless the court order specifically directs that other people can attend the Pinion Project visits, those visits are supposed to be for the parent and the child only. And basically, Ricky wanted to bring his other children to the visits. Now, personally, I don't think it had a damn thing to do with them reuniting. I think it had to do with some sort of weird coaching tactic or something. I don't know what, but we were pretty insistent keeping those kids away from Patricia's kids because we forgot to mention this. At the very first hearing that we had in court, Ricky took his children out of school, not the younger two, but the older two, and had them sitting in the court hearing, watching the hearing, prepared to testify against Patricia.
yeah,
So,
I remember because he had lied and said that the Pinion Project said he could do it, but I wouldn't let him. And then we had to go and send to his lawyer the handbook.
yeah, he was claiming that she was interfering in the kids' right to see their siblings, and it was all her fault. And this is one of the things that would happen with Ricky. He would say something, it would come through his lawyer. Rich wouldn't look into anything. Rich would just take whatever Ricky said as gospel. I would immediately confront Rich with either the law or the court order that said no, and be like, yeah, nice try, bud. And that would usually be the end of it. And then he'd try something different. That was a pretty common thing that Ricky did. So
Like with the first offer he made us, he went around and told everybody, I got the house in exchange for the kids.
all right, actually, let's stop and talk about that for a second. So after you filed the protection order, thank you for reminding me about that. You had said in the last recording that you were starting to have people from your church not talk to you in the month leading up to your divorce. Can you talk a little bit about that and what was going on and what you found out?
Well, I found out he was going around telling people stories about me. At first, he would say I wasn't working. I was just going out running around town doing things.
And let me just ask you, where were you working at?
I was working at Southwest Memorial Hospital, and then I was working at the health department, and then I was working at the school. So,
Okay, and you got the job at the school as a school nurse, right? The high school nurse.
correct.
You got that job when?
Right after I filed for divorce,
Okay, and why did you take that job?
because it was more conducive to meet the children's needs. In
Okay, and you could still, you knew that you were going to be a single parent for a while,
that is,
right?
and I
Okay,
think
and you knew that Mr. Thompson had a protection order for your children, and so you took a job that gave you the ability to be with them.
correct.
Was it less money?
It was a significantly amount of less money.
Okay, all right. But did you have any other choices?
No, not out there. No.
Okay. So getting back to the church thing, you said that you were working somewhere else and that you noticed that he was telling people that you weren't working. So what else happened?
So for a while, he was telling people I wasn't working until people started seeing me at work and were saying, "No, I saw her at work." And then he would tell people I didn't want to be at church, and because he it was the weirdest thing. He would make us drive separate cars to church because his kids were uncomfortable sitting in the truck because they said it was too small for all of us, even though it held seats for six. So we drove separately to church,
How far away was your church from your house?
15 minutes.
Okay.
And so
Whoa.
when we're driving separately to church, people were asking why. And, I was telling them, but apparently Ricky was telling them it's because he likes to go out for lunch after church and that the girls and I weren't coming because we didn't want to be around him and his kids.
So this is before you filed for divorce.
This was before,
Okay, when did you find out this information?
after I filed for divorce.
And how did you find out this information?
Because I had a friend at the church that came forward and told me, Ricky's saying that you traded the kids for a house. Now it's 13 years. We started out going to church together. We kind of hung her out because we're both nurses. And then I went to work for her for a year and a half before she retired from that job. And then we're still friends. We still did, like the summer camps together and things like that.
Okay. And so I just want to ask you about the way that your church handled this. So Ricky's
See,
spreading
Jill,
all these. Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, just a real quick question. I've been in Cortez. Nothing is 15 minutes apart in Cortez. Is the church in
It's
Cortez?
in Areola. It's in Louis Areola.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
Yeah,
right. I just
it's
wanted.
on the way to it's on the way to Dove Creek.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was being accurate in my assessment that it was not in town. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's Louis Areola Bible Church is on County Road S, as in Sam. And just to put in perspective, the hospital is about A. So basically, well, let me just ask you: didn't once the news was out? Well, how did the news get out that you had filed this protection order and divorce against Ricky?
I had told Beth I had filed for divorce and I have a protection order. She went to the elders board and told them. But before that happened, apparently Ricky was talking to the pastor, telling him I'm a mean, evil woman and that I abuse him.
How
And
was he doing that?
he was going to the office and telling him that.
Did other people overhear him saying that?
Yes,
How did they overhear him saying that?
because the office door was wide open and Ricky speaks loud.
He would say it whenever there was church going, like church services
Yeah,
going on.
there was an activity, if there was a service, as long as people were around, he was there doing that.
Okay. And so did anybody from your church reach out to you to ask if you were okay or check on you or find out what was going on?
Only
Okay, but no one else from the church contacted you to ask you if you were safe or if you were okay or anything?
no one.
Okay. And so what were you thinking about your church at that point in time?
I thought they had abandoned me and they kicked me to the,
Okay. And did you start going to any other church elsewhere?
yes, I started going to Lighthouse Baptist Church.
Okay. And let me ask you, was that one of the locations that Ricky was restrained from going?
Yes, it is.
And that's because the children go to school there and you put them on the protection order?
Correct.
And so Ricky was not allowed to go into that church.
That is correct.
Do you know if Ricky attempted to contact that church or influence that church after you started attending there?
I believe he tried to, yes.
Do you know if Ricky wrote them a $5,000 check in October after your divorce case had been opened?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and did that check go through?
I believe it did. Oh, no,
Did
no, he put a stop payment on that check. I'm sorry.
he put a stop payment on it after we caught him and told Rich that he had written a $5,000 check?
That is correct.
That was almost a month after we'd filed for divorce.
That is correct.
All right. So just the little church background there. So we do go for Rich and I are negotiating. Rich is basically giving me nothing. And that's kind of what we were encountering here, where he was just coming at me with ridiculous stuff. And I finally started saying to him in emails, I don't work on Ricky Thompson's timetable. Don't you dare talk to me like I'm Ricky like you're speaking to me from Ricky Thompson's voice. Don't you talk to me like that. And so Rich wasn't getting very far with this. He kept trying to negotiate with Patricia to remove the protection order and let him just have unsupervised parenting time. And we said, no, we don't agree with this. We don't think this is safe. And so on October 26th, we had a hearing. Ricky did not want to take the protection order hearing up and asked for a continuance on that matter. So he agreed to keep the temporary protection order in place, which was fine with us. We set it out to January and we had a hearing on temporary orders, which included parenting time, decision making, and payment of bills and things like that. The judge gave Patricia sole decision making. That's a significant thing. We used to call it legal custody. Sole decision making means she has the right to make all major decisions about the children, including where they attend school, which medical providers they go to, what extracurricular activities they participate in. And she can't control Ricky's right to instruct the children in a religion of his own choosing, but as far as like religious rights and ordinances, she would have that decision making authority. That's always a stick in the craw of an abuser when they don't get joint decision making. The statute specifically says if there is evidence of domestic abuse, the court cannot order joint decision making. It is against the law. And so it would have gone either Ricky would have had everything or Patricia would have had everything. But because the evidence was showing that Ricky was the aggressor, Patricia got that. Ricky got every other week of overnight parenting time unsupervised and Wednesdays from 5 to 8. Is that right?
Yeah, every other weekend and then after school, from after school till 7 p.m.
Till 7 p.m. And so he wasn't on 50-50. He was essentially on basically the same schedule he had been given for his other children back in the day. But he told Patricia didn't happen. But that's, and then as far as the payment of bills were concerned, the good news was because of the house is being paid off, they didn't have a mortgage, but they did have utilities and ongoing expenses. Because of the fact that Mr. Thompson refused to disclose any financial documents to us. We told the judge, we don't even know what her cell phone bill is. We don't know what her electric bill is. We don't know the account numbers. He had put literally everything in his name and wouldn't give us any information. The magistrate who handled the hearing said, all right, well, since you didn't disclose everything, you're responsible for all payment of utilities and household expenses while the case is pending. And so that kind of backfired on him. And we left that hearing waiting for the court to appoint a child and family investigator. Do you want to say anything more before I move on about child and family investigation? Patricia, anything else you want to add?
It was a nightmare.
Mm,
It's corrupted. It's a corrupt system.
okay.
And it's little people with two.
Are you talking about the CFIs? I say we'll get there. I just saying, is there anything else you want to say about the October 26th here?
Yes. We had asked because from the moment I filed, I was very clear on that I was moving out of state. What I wanted to do, and that's why we asked for one. One of the main is I was moving out of state. So we wait for this person to be appointed and we wait and we wait.
Okay.
We go to
Yeah,
our,
no, I like this. This is a good lead up because I'll give you the little backstory, Kirk, on why what she just said is significant. Um, we have something in the United States called the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Enforcement Act, the UCCJEA. And what the UCCJEA is, it's a federal act that basically establishes whenever there could be competing jurisdictions over who can make decisions for a kid, how courts can communicate and decide which state is the state that's going to make choices. So at this point in time, both of our parents, Ricky and Patricia, are both asking for Judge Plew, Colorado, to make decisions regarding the kids. However, um, the court does have the ability to prevent children from leaving once they have made a first determination on parenting time. And so at this point in time, we're still in this temporary world. There's been no final decisions on parenting time. If a parent in the initial custody determination claims that they do not want to live in the state where the case is filed, that's the kind of really the only time that you can kind of do it without getting some sort of blowback. You have the right to request at the very first determination, hey, I do not want to live here when this divorce case is over. I want to take the children. I want to go to X, Y, and Z states. And the court just has to accept where the parties want to live. They cannot prevent a parent from traveling. It's a constitutional freedom to travel from state to state. Once the first order is put in place, then the court has the ability to say, mom or dad, you can move, but your kids are staying here. And so we had told the in the very first pleading, that's why we asked for the CFI, hey, she wants to move to another state. We know this is going to be high conflict. We know there's going to be lots of accusations thrown around, and we want to make sure that, you know, her rights are afforded and that she's heard. So we're asking for this person to do an investigation on her proposed location and the domestic violence issues that are at play here to make a determination on what's in the best interest of these kids for the court to decide, because a CFI, child and family investigator, is supposed to have special training in the world of domestic abuse. In fact, they completely overhauled the CFI and PRE system in 2022 and 2023. I used to be a CFI. I relinquished my commission to it because I knew I was moving out of state. But everybody that is involved in CFI work in the entire state had to go through like an 80-hour training specifically dealing on the issues that were impacting this case. And so the lady who was appointed to our case, Tisha Strawn, who is a former Montezuma County Sheriff's deputy, who previously used to hold peace officer safety training certification, and who I had known to get involved in private PI work after she wasn't working at the sheriff's office. I assume she retired, but I don't know if she did or not. Now I'm kind of questioning that, whether she retired or not, because of the action she took in this case, but I don't know. But when she was recommended, I didn't really think much of it. I thought, okay, she's got a background in investigation. She claims that she took this training. She's a former law enforcement officer. Surely, you know, she's doing all these other cases for La Plata and Montezuma counties. She must be okay, because I'd never had her involved in any of my cases as a CFI. And so she was supposed to be appointed in October, and then the magistrate, who was brand new to the bench, had been on the bench for like a week at the time I think she did Patricia's hearing, forgot to appoint the magistrate. And so finally, even though she was supposed to appoint her in August, sometime in mid-November, we finally got Tisha appointed to the case. And so, Patricia, I'll turn it to you, and you can tell about your first interactions with Tisha.
So Tisha's appointed, and I was expecting her to contact me within a week or two, and she did. After I contacted her, I reached out to her after 2 weeks and said, hey, my name is Patricia Thompson. You've been appointed. I need to know the next steps to take.
Let me ask you really quickly, did you have to pay for her services?
Yes.
The court ordered you to pay her money.
Yes.
And she wasn't returning your phone call.
Correct. So she finally got back to me, and she's not the very nicest person getting back to me. She says, I will, I have a lot to do. I will get back to you when I get back to you. Just await my call. Okay. Great.
I think she also said that she was going to wait until after I think she got appointed, I want to say November 7th. And when they finally made contact, she told Patricia she wanted to wait until after the holidays.
That's right.
To start the investigation.
After Thanksgiving.
What? Why?
Oh, wait, wait,
Never
wait.
mind.
Just wait.
Okay.
No, she said she wanted to wait until after the holidays. Now, let me ask you, Patricia, did she call you at all after Thanksgiving in November?
No, she called me for that first call, and then she talked to me a second time to tell me where to send her payment, and then nothing for a long time.
Okay. And so we did not hear back from Tisha Strawn until I believe January 4th.
When we reached out to her,
And why did we reach out to her? Tell Kirk what was going on at that. Well, actually, let me back up for 1 second. So we are following this new court order. I'm just going to lead you up into why we contacted her. We're following this new court order where Ricky has this modified parenting time. Rich and I are trying to coordinate how are we going to get the girls. We had to get the order set up because he's allowed to go to the school to pick them up. But because of the concern of him interfering in their education or trying to manipulate teachers, he's not allowed to stay there or loiter around the school. And so Rich and I are still going back and forth, still trying to get money. In the meantime, Ricky was ordered to pay Patricia child support. He paid her child support from her own monies in the joint account. So he used her own money to pay her child support. And so I'm getting pretty pissed off at Ricky Thompson at this point in time. And I'm going back and forth with Rich. And what ends up happening is we notice that, well, Patricia notices, excuse me, that the children, especially Rebecca, the older one, is starting to kind of confront her mother about things that she shouldn't be talking about. Also trying to sneak items out of the house. And so Patricia, I'll let you just talk about that a little bit.
so immediately after he starts getting weekend visits, the girls come back. Hannah's quiet, she's not saying much, but Rebecca starts asking me why I won't give Daddy back his furniture, why I stole his recliner, why I won't let him have his clothes, just things like
Now, I want to stop you really quickly here too. We had never refused to give Ricky back his things. In fact, I told Rich, hey, she's absolutely willing to work something out. He's already gotten 2 civil standbys, but if he didn't get what he wants, give us a list of what he wants. And if she has it available and it's not being used, we'll give it to him. He asked for literally everything in the house. He gave me a list
Stoves
of
and refrigerators and everything,
literally
right?
everything in the house.
things that
To which I said to Rich, come on, dude, be reasonable. This is fucking crazy. Excuse my language, but that's pretty much what I said.
he gave
Why?
that didn't even exist in the house.
Yeah. And then he kept claiming that Patricia repeatedly over, oh, I don't have it. It's in the file cabinet that Trisha broke into. I mean, that one, he started using that one in October and that one didn't go. He still uses that one. And I'm like,
Yeah,
play it again, Sam. She doesn't even live there anymore. Nice try.
he would ask for things for me to go get things out of the file cabinet and then claim I broke into it.
Yeah. Yes. And so, anyways,
Sorry,
I
just
was
really quick. When you said January, are you talking January 2024, right?
January 2024.
So
Yeah.
this
Case
year?
was
Okay.
filed September, protection order entered October 26th, parenting order.
Okay.
And we're still trying to get the investigator to do her thing. We can't have her hearing because the investigator is not working. She had a deadline to do her report by February 8th. So by January, when we haven't heard from her, and she's been appointed for 2 months at this point, and now the child is starting to send messages to the mother through the father, which is absolutely a violation of the protection order. Third party contact is prohibited.
Which I
I advise Patricia to reach out to the CFI as well as calling law enforcement to report a protection order violation. I believe that was January 4th or somewhere thereabouts. So go ahead, Patricia, from there.
So when they started doing this, I did call the police on him. I filed a report. They said they checked with the DA to see if he'll prosecute. The DA said, no dice, we're not going to prosecute.
Now, let me stop you for 1 second. What did your protection order say as far as the language?
No contact whatsoever except through talking parents or text messages.
Okay, and so would contact through your minor child calling you a sinner and asking for daddy's Bible back and saying you stole his furniture, would that fall under the exception? No, right?
Yep. That's a
Okay.
lot. But
So anyways, did the DA, even though no contact, no exceptions, did the DA take your complaint seriously?
no,
Okay, and what did they say?
They said there's not enough evidence to prosecute it.
And that was Ron Colquitt, correct?
That is correct.
Ron Colquitt. All right,
Ron
continuing on. So what happened when you tried to talk to the CFI?
So I call the CFI and make contact. She is irritated with me. She goes, fine, I'll come out to your house and talk to you and the kids.
Now, I just want to stop real quick because as a CFI, I can tell you the fact that she had not been there and it had been over 60 days since her appointment is insane. It is absolutely malpractice. As a CFI myself, I was required within 7 days of appointment to file a disclosures saying whether or not I was acquainted with the other individuals in the case, including the judge, how I knew them, and giving the other party an opportunity to respond whether or not I should be appointed to the case. Pretty much as a matter of practice, with the exception of during COVID, I made a practice to meet each of the parents independently within 10 days of my appointment. And when I would meet the parents, would make appointments to meet their kids within the next week independently. So for her to not have even met Patricia at this point is literally insane. And at that point, we assumed she had not met the children either because she was going to wait until after the holidays. So go on, Patricia.
So she finally agrees, fine, I'll come out and meet you. So she comes out. She looks up at my house. She's disheveled. Her hair's not brushed. She's wearing mud boots. She throws her stuff down and says, okay, let's talk. What's going on? So I tell her my story. She's hardly taking any notes. She acts like she's got something better to do. You know, she's not really asking any questions. And then so we set up a date for her to meet the kids. She comes and does that. She doesn't really interact with them all that much. She doesn't ask them very many questions. And she has me take her and the kids on a tour of the house. And then she leaves. And I don't hear.
Okay.
So after
Did
that,
she say, let me just ask you, did she give you any feedback on whether or not what her thoughts were on your oldest child, essentially the father using her to break the protection order?
she said kids lie. And that
Did she talk to your daughter or ask your daughter if she'd been talked to her by her dad?
Nope, she didn't ask for anything in my presence.
Okay. All right. So continuing on.
So then after that, the only thing she said was, if anything comes up, let me know. So anyway, so I'm notifying her every time something happens, and it's just getting more and more bizarre. And so one night I notify her everything's by email because I can't ever get her on the phone. She doesn't answer her phone. And so I send her an email saying, this is what's going on. She sends me back another one that says, enough is enough. Things have got to end. So she calls me, we talk, and I thought things were going better than they were. And they weren't.
Okay. And so, throughout this entire time, now I'm going to say something about me as at doing this work that I do. There have been a few times over my career where I've had a situation where I've had somebody who I've had somebody who's come to me with these stories about their ex that sound fantastical and they sound crazy, and I kind of sit there and go, okay, are they overreacting? And so when Patricia was first telling me about Tisha, I was kind of cautious, and it wasn't that I didn't necessarily believe what she was saying, but I'm like, I'm not present for these meetings. I don't know what Tisha's saying to Trisha. I don't know how Trisha's hearing it. And so I was kind of like, well, it doesn't sound normal for Tisha to do that, but I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And so I just kind of told Patricia, like, hey, monitor this. But one of the things that Tisha had said to her very specifically was that she wanted to know about whether or not Patricia would stay in Colorado. And she kind of approached it when she got in the case in January as if he didn't realize this was a domestic abuse case and she didn't know Patricia was intending to move. So in January, at the beginning of January, I contacted her in a joint email with Rich and said, hey, I don't know if you're confused. I wasn't part of the conversation, so I'm just relaying what my client said to me. But It sounds to me like you're trying to recommend that her and Ricky do counseling together, which you can't do. There's domestic abuse, number one. And number two, it sounds
All
to me
right.
like you're trying to recommend that she be not allowed to move, which you can't do. That's against the law. So I'm not trying to tell you your business. I'm not trying to tell you how to do things. I don't even know if you said this. I'm just telling you what my client is concerned about. And I want to make sure we're all on the same page. You have to use the Spalmer v. Gillette standard, and that's the relocation standard. And you have to use 1410-124. Sorry, you have to use these two things. This is what your whole entire analysis hinges upon. And I wasn't meaning it like a shitty way. I honestly was just like, oh, CFI may be a little confused about what she's supposed to do,
And
right?
then add
That's
another.
it. And she did not like me sending that information. I will say that. But that's the only way I could think. I mean, Rich didn't disagree with me, and at that point in time, it was really strange because as soon as I sent that email, suddenly Rich let me know, oh, hey, oh, by the way, Vicky is gonna move to Texas. At no point in time prior to this had Ricky ever said a word about Texas. Besides, he was going to take the kids there away from Trisha, but he wasn't going to move there. Now all of a sudden, he's relocating too. So Tisha needs to investigate that as well. And I actually am pulling up the order just because I want to see what Tisha was specifically ordered to do under the court order. It says that she was specifically appointed to on here. Where's that thing at? It's on here somewhere. She's supposed to investigate and make recommendations regarding these issues, permanent parenting time and decision making that is in the best interest of the children, and also directed to investigate allegations of domestic violence. That's what she was supposed to investigate. So, we're bringing her issues pertaining to those things, and she's being very hostile to Patricia. She's basically ignoring me, and at that point, we're starting to get a little bit concerned.
So then,
And so go ahead, Patricia.
so then she makes another, what she called her final visit with just the parents. So she comes and she sees me, and this woman is hostile and hot. She sits me down. She goes, look, I know you're lying. I know you made that video of you running away to frame Ricky Thompson. I
So the
know.
video that we showed you, the
The
7-second
Ricky,
video where he was
Ricky,
holding
yes.
where he was holding the video.
Yes, that
Okay,
video.
go ahead.
She says, you were filming that. You made it. You set him up. You're the abuser. You need to just fess up to it. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then she starts asking me about sex with Ricky during the marriage, all kinds of weird, bizarre questions about that. And then she starts grilling me again as why I'm setting him up, how we need to be 50-50 custody, how the kids need to stay with him. We need to go to joint counseling, which he is to pay for and to arrange.
He
And
yeah, he has the right to choose the counselor that she's got to attend.
and the appointment time, and how I just need to stop my nonsense. At this point, I'm almost hysterical crying. She keeps throwing accusations at me, how I'm the abuser. I set all this up. I stole money. How he never kept money from me. She looked at the accounts. I have plenty. I'm just lying, and that I need to.
By the way, just real quick side note. First of all, she didn't look at the accounts, and secondly, even if she did, I just gave you the scope of her appointment. That would be exceeding her authority.
So, needless to say, then she tells me at this point, I'm just almost lost it. I'm crying. She tells me court's not going to go my way. They're going to give him the kids, and she's going to make sure that she testifies that I don't need to see these kids, but on a like every other weekend basis, even though she wanted us to have 50-50 and all that stuff. So I'm hysterical, and I call Jill. I'm like, Jill, what the hell? What's going on? Why is she doing this to me? Why is she asking questions about sex with Ricky?
Right.
All this different stuff.
She was asking really inappropriate questions, and whenever Trisha called me and said this, I'm like, why in the fuck would she be asking that? That has nothing to do with your parenting time. your sexual proclivities during your marriage or, whatever, have nothing to do with parenting abilities whatsoever. That's really strange.
Because it wasn't just basic normal it was bizarre, in depth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was she
And
new?
no.
No.
So let's just
She was
sidetrack.
trained. She was trained. She was trained. She was
Okay,
trained.
so I'm just going to tell you this way. I'm going to say it to you this way. Whatever Tisha Strawn did was in no way, shape, or form the product of any training she received pertaining to child and family investigators in the state of Colorado. I will tell you that after Patricia contacted me and told me about this, I immediately reached out to Tisha. This was a few days before her report was due. Yes. February 2nd is the day that February 2nd was the day that she had the stupid meeting. Her report was due February 8th. So I sent her an innocuous email on February 2nd and just said, hey, when you release your report on the 8th, please make sure that you give me a copy of your underlying file. We'll pay for any charges, which I'm allowed to ask for. I'm totally allowed to ask for that. And he got real pissy about me doing that. And so I actually went through and said, hey, I just want to remind you, this is a relocation case. And, you've got to keep doing this. So I forwarded it back to her because she was basically ignoring stuff. And then I also wrote her this email on February 3rd. Because, February 2nd, Trisha called me hysterical. I'm trying to figure out what the hell happened. And by the time February 3rd, which is Saturday, rolls around, I've had time to kind of process, talk to Trisha, get more information. So I wrote her an email because basically Tisha told her at the meeting, this is what I'm going to recommend, and the judge is going to do it, and you're going to lose. Now, mind you, this is a month and a half before our hearing is set. And I'm like, she can't tell you that. She's not a fucking judge. What's she doing? So I wrote Tisha, along with Richard Sims and Patricia CC'd on this. Hey, my client relayed you were opposed to relocation. I understand you were not an attorney, but in the first determination on parenting time, the court has to accept where the parties wish to live and allocate that time accordingly. And I gave her the case citation. I said, essentially, this means the court has to pretend like the parties have already moved. The court has no authority to either party to stay in Colorado at this juncture. So you making that recommendation is contrary to the law and not within the jurisdiction of the court. My client is relocating to such and such state, and Mr. Thompson has informed you he is moving to Texas. I'm asking that you consider that rather than trying to ask the parties to stay here. Secondly, the court will not order family therapy, especially in a case where domestic abuse is alleged. My client will not be engaging in couples counseling or family therapy with Mr. Thompson, and I would imagine he would not agree to that with my client. Regardless, the court cannot order these parties to sit in the same room, especially when there's a protection order. I realize the standard for domestic abuse is different than what you used as a deputy, but the standard we're using in this case is found at this place. You just have the training on it, according to her document. I don't think she did have the training on it. I think she lied about that. I said, I have concerns about potential bias based upon what has been relayed to me by my client. I'm asking you honestly. Now, mind you, this is 5 days before reports due. If you can continue this investigation neutrally, adhering to the order appointing you, which asks you to investigate parental responsibilities under 1410-124 and whether domestic abuse exists between one or both parties. If you feel you can do so, we await your report. If you cannot, then I believe you're required to notify the courts you have a bias or prejudice you cannot overcome and ask to be removed. Historical employment, finances, and historical family dynamics prior to this marriage do not seem relevant. I'm not trying to attack you, but asking about their marital sex life, Ricky's triathlon history, and whether or not my client sends photos to her relatives of the children is not relevant under the best interest standard. I wish I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what's said, but if in fact you are investigating these things, it is beyond the scope of what you've been asked to investigate. I understand it's hard to know exactly what happened when we're hearing from different people, but I have to make a record of my concerns to preserve my client's rights in the event we need to contest your report. And then I also mentioned, she had mentioned that she had the PRE. That's the first time Patricia and I knew the PRE was around. I said, hey, if you got it, you need to turn it over to me. And that started the beginning of my difficulties getting documents, not only from Mr. Thompson, but also from Patricia Strawn. And we've been going for an hour and 15. I know, Patricia, do you have to go to bed? Probably we should maybe wrap it here and we can talk about. I will tell you this. We'll finish with this. we will go into this specifics of what Tisha recommended, but just before we end today, we absolutely filed a complaint on Tisha Strawn under a new policy under the state of Colorado that requires me to have a judge vet my complaint before it can be turned over to the state. And I had the first hearing in the state ever held under that rule. And we prevailed and had Miss Strawn kicked off of the case. And the child and family investigator roster for the entire state of Colorado. She can never again be a CFI because of what she did in this case. And I think that'd be an excellent place to start next time. Patricia, what do you got?
I think so too. I just, even thinking back on it, it's still horrifying as to what she tried to do to me and my children and I.
I do want to throw out a little bit of speculation here. This is totally conjecture. I have absolutely nothing to back this up because I can't get financial records. I personally believe that before Tisha Strawn was ever appointed to this case, if you remember, I mentioned that she had done side work as a private investigator. I believe 100% that Tisha Strawn was hired to surveil Patricia by Ricky long before her involvement in this case was ever even thought of by the court. I don't think she disclosed that. And the reason I believe that is just some of the things that she was doing and the things that she had are things that would be coming from a private investigator. She clearly approached the entire investigation, which she's supposed to be neutral, at a place of adversarial positioning against Miss Thompson when there was no reason to do so. And the minute I started asking her questions, she did what all narcissists do and started attacking me and trying to threaten me. And I believe the reason that's important is because if Ricky is restrained by a protection order, it is a felony to hire a private investigator to surveil a protected party. And former detective who had peace officer safety training standards and who also had taken the Colorado PI test would know that they could also be held criminally liable if they took a commission knowing they were surveilling a protected party, which Ms. Strawn clearly did because she had access to the court file and knew she was investigating allegations of domestic violence. And I believe that's where the tie-in. I think that Patricia Strawn and Ricky Thompson knew each other way longer than any of us realized.
Is this the only case you've dealt with Tisha, Jill?
As a CFI, yes. I can tell you I have dealt with her in other matters. I actually hired her in one of my other matters to oversee the division of property in a highly contested case with a lot of property where Picassos were going missing and stuff. We contracted with her for 2 days to supervise the division of assets, and she cataloged things and did a good job. I didn't have any issues with her. I was pretty pleased. She kept things orderly.
You did say Picasso's, right?
I did say Picasso. That's correct.
I just want to make sure that
I was a divorce lawyer. I might be poor because I didn't charge enough, but my clients all had money. So
yeah, no, I'd be surprised if there was one Picasso in the state of South Dakota. So
yeah.
Pluralization is surprising.
I just like I said, I don't know for certain, and actually we'll end it there for tonight. I don't know for certain that Patricia, or that, excuse me, I keep saying Patricia. I do not know that Tisha was hired by Ricky. I just have a very strong feeling that she was. And it's the only thing that really makes sense because as a woman who claimed to be the best CFI in the area, who had, I believe at the time she was disqualified, 16 other cases that all got screwed up because of her actions. 16 other cases where people paid money to her, never got their money back. The only reason I can see her lying and not throwing Ricky Thompson under the bus is because it would throw her under the bus too. And the only thing that I know that would throw her under the bus is if she had felony charges for violating her Colorado Peace Officer Safety Training Standards and violating the Colorado Private Investigators Licensure Act. Which
I guess I just have one other quick question.
Sure.
Hey Patricia, how's day-to-day life going?
Everyday life is awesome.
Good.
I'm growing, I'm thriving. The girls are doing awesome. And the longer periods of time that they don't have contact with their father, the better off they're doing.
So